Look, if there's a moment where everything tightens up for the Ravens, it's right now. They crawled out of that brutal 1-5 hole, stacked 5 straight wins, and pulled the season back on track. All that only led them to the most stressful point of the year. Every game feels like a must-win. Every detail feels heavier, and one wrong step could erase everything they fought for. It's that feeling of being so close to flipping the whole story that you just can't look away from what comes next. And the wildest part is that the path is clear, not easy, but clear. The Ravens need to keep winning. Take these division matchups seriously, and avoid falling into the chaos of the wild card race, where everyone is packed together just waiting for someone to slip. That's where the suspense kicks in. They've already proved they can fight back. But can they hold on through this final stretch the way they need to? Because from this point on, every step matters, and what happens next could change everything. When the Ravens opened the season with that rough 1-5 record, it felt like everything had flipped upside down. It's the kind of start that shakes any team, because nothing clicks, and every week turns into an emotional grind. But even with that dark cloud hanging over them, there was still something keeping the team alive. With Lamar Jackson leading the way, nobody could look at Baltimore and say the season was dead. It also revealed a truth a lot of analysts didn't really want to admit. This roster wasn't as strong as the preseason hype suggested. Expectations hit a wall fast, and that early stretch made it obvious that things would be tougher than people imagined. Still, Jackson's presence worked like a psychological shield. As long as he was there, the team carried that sense that a way out always existed. Because of that, even in their lowest moments, the Ravens never fully lost that small spark of hope. They knew they were stumbling, but they also knew they had enough talent to rally if they found the right moment. It felt like they were hanging on by a thread, waiting for the chance to regain rhythm and prove they still had the strength to fight for season. And that mindset, that refusal to give up, became the foundation for everything that followed and explains how the team managed to stay alive. Because once they accepted they had no margin for error, everything changed. A new phase began, and that's where the next point comes in. Execution became everything, and every detail started to carry real weight for the team's future. Right after that tough start, it became clear the Ravens had only one way to climb back into the race: play almost perfectly. It was a heavy mission because any slip-up could have ended their season for good. They knew they had to take advantage of the softer part of the schedule and turn each game into a steady step toward recovery. The pressure was enormous, but the alternative was accepting failure, and that was never an option. At the same time, the team had to deal with something that had been hurting them from beginning: injuries. It felt like every week someone important went down, and that killed the team's rhythm. To stay on track, Baltimore needed not only to play better, but also hope that this wave of injuries finally slowed down. It was like rowing against the current, knowing one more setback could throw everything off again. Even so, there was real belief inside the locker room that they could still regain control of the season. The idea was simple on paper, but tough to execute. Win the more manageable games and survive the harder ones. And no matter how challenging that sounded, the team bought into it completely. Every detail needed to be treated like a game changer, because in their situation, everything mattered. That total focus became the turning point that fueled the comeback, setting the stage for the winning streak that transformed the entire outlook of the season. And that leads straight into the next topic, the moment when Baltimore finally started to feel like things were shifting in their favor. When the Ravens came back from the bye week, it felt like something finally clicked. They found a steadier rhythm, cut down on mistakes, and turned that new mindset into real results. And it wasn't just a small run, it was 5 straight wins, all against teams that, in other years, Baltimore probably would have handled with ease. Still, this group had to prove they could pass this test of maturity. The streak wasn't perfect, and that showed more than once. The offense still had ups and downs. Some games that should have been easy turned messy, and the team kept mixing strong moments with shaky ones inside the same matchup. But what mattered most was the final score, and they kept finding ways to win, even when they weren't playing their best football. With every win, Baltimore regained something that felt lost: confidence. Seeing their record climb to 6-5, finally with more wins and losses, brought back the feeling that the season was alive again. It was like the heavy weight of that 1-5 start was finally lifting. making room for a more positive, energized atmosphere around the team. And that new phase pushed them into the stretch that would truly define their season. The head-to-head battles with the Bengals and Steelers, the exact opponents who would shape the AFC North race and drive the heart of the next topic.
All right, we're already past the halfway point of this video, but before we continue, I noticed you haven't left a like yet. It's really important because it helps YouTube keep showing you my content so I can keep bringing you the best news about the Baltimore Ravens. So go ahead and hit that like button. It's free and it really helps. Thanks. Now let's get back to it.
The final stretch of the Ravens' schedule didn't show up to play nice. For their last 6 games were against the Cincinnati Bengals and Pittsburgh Steelers, 2 rivals who know Baltimore better than anyone. These matchups carried massive weight because they were the ones that could decide who would walk out of the AFC North with the crown and who would be left out of the playoff party. It was the kind of stretch that can shape an entire season. The Bengals, even with Joe Burrow back, didn't look like a team with enough juice to fully re-enter the race. But that didn't make the matchup easier. Division games are never simple, and Baltimore knew one moment of sloppiness could cost them dearly. They needed full focus, full intensity, and 0 mistakes, because there was no margin left for anything else. The Steelers, meanwhile, were the biggest direct obstacle. With the exact same 6-5 record, they were standing right in Baltimore's path. Those 2 matchups could completely shift the season, one way or another. Winning both meant taking absolute control of the division. Losing meant putting everything at risk again. It was the kind of showdown that electrifies a whole building and sends confidence into overdrive. In that setting, every divisional win mattered even more. And that's exactly where the next topic comes in. Because everything Baltimore needed to avoid the wild card chaos started with these AFC North head-to-head battles. Inside the AFC North, every win means more than just a number on the standings. Winning the division doesn't just secure a playoff spot. It saves a team from getting dragged into that suffocating wild card mess, where a bunch of teams are piled up with similar records. And the Ravens understood this perfectly. Winning the division wasn't just the best path. It was the only path they trusted to get back to the postseason without depending on anyone else. Baltimore had already checked off an important box, beating the Cleveland Browns twice. Those wins helped the team's confidence and created a crucial cushion inside the division. But with 5 total losses, it was unlikely they'd run the table from here. That meant, now more than ever, they needed to outplay their direct rivals and keep a clear advantage over them. The wild card picture made everything even clearer. 3 teams were already sitting at 7-4 ahead of Baltimore, and others who had beaten the Ravens head-to-head, like the Kansas City Chiefs and Houston Texans, were also in the mix. If Baltimore slipped into that fight, they'd be stuck with tiebreaker disadvantages that were tough to overcome. It was the exact situation they wanted to avoid because they knew their best odds were inside the division. That's why the games against Pittsburgh carried almost decisive weight. Beating the Steelers wouldn't just boost their record. It would put Baltimore back in control of their destiny, with enough momentum to hold steady to the final stretch and reclaim their usual postseason spot. The whole season came down to one simple thing: turning every win into a solid step toward the final goal. At the end of the day, it all comes back to what the Ravens have shown throughout this turnaround. Focus when no one believed, 5 straight wins that brought the season back to life, and a real shot at taking over the division down the stretch. Now, with the Bengals and Steelers ahead and the pressure to avoid the wild card chaos, Baltimore knows exactly what needs to be done. It's not about perfection. It's about consistency, discipline, and keeping the same energy that took them from 1-5 back into the fight for the top. So here's the question. Do you believe the Ravens have what it takes to finish this stretch the way the season demands? Because if they keep this pace and treat every matchup like a playoff game, their path isn't just open. It's calling them in. Now it's about staying sharp, turning every detail into an advantage, and proving once again that this team was never out of fight.
And if you, just like me, are passionate about the world of football and want to learn more about the Ravens' legacy, don't leave this video without sharing it with that friend who is also a Baltimore Ravens fan and will love this content. See those video suggestions on your screen? The first one was handpicked just for you, and the other is a recommendation from YouTube itself.